smart.
So it was for,
Good chemistry.
200.
But I didn't want to call in sick
So I
again.
said, well,
It's all, I mean, I don't know.
it went on, the conversation.
Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes it's better that way. As long as you're down and
I said,
you're
so
takes a certain
I
amount of
just
space. It takes a certain amount of
referred to the cards,
Oh my goodness.
MasterCard. I don't have a MasterCard.
Still, I mean, I know with.
Aren't you right? Mom answered yet. He said, gave us the address, it was from Atlanta, Georgia. I said, no, you got the wrong one. You got the wrong Mahoney.
You know, and it's just like,
It's either done or
there's a
over the
workbench,
phone.
there's like
You're a
tools.
mess.
So,
Yeah, my dad bad bills for another
You
Don.
seem otherwise
Okay.
really healthy, but you're
There's a
always
football
taking
coach in
process. Since you're on the list.
My dad both had JCPenney bills.
I watched the
Well,
video.
He'd be
that-
delinquent,
you know,
Dad
if
would
he,
get the bill.
is that right?
So eventually just canceled.
Yeah,
Texaco.
Yeah.
Send me my,
I think
my
they'll be asking you
Texaco
to
card.
make a
Hi,
decision.
Charlie.
Two of them.
Hi, Charles.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I put my Robert's phone in my wallet, and I put the other one in the dresser. So at the end of the month, I kept getting these bills
No,
out
no,
of
only other.
Wenatchee or someplace like that, for Robert H. Mahoney.
That's cute.
Or Robert A. Mahoney.
Sounds like you're gonna have to.
And so he had put my card in his wallet. I put my card in my wallet.
First step is to
And we
get the
both
garage
put
cleaned.
each other's cards in the dresser.
Is
And
it
we were
always
both using my card. So I had to call the guy up. Hey, how are you?
5 other things.
Okay.
There was exactly want to do. But,
So,
yeah.
oh, my wife downloaded it. So I had to call him up. His dad answered. He says he's on maneuvers out in the desert in Washington. It won't be 2 weeks until we get over.
Can I hand you the
Do me a
book?
favor, will you? Tell him not to use the gas card. And guess what?
Yeah.
The Texaco made good
he had
all
all
the
this
stuff. He had,
Well, when you've got, that sort of evidence, most big companies will do.
yeah.
My brother
The
did that.
thousands of dollars.
That's the
See if anybody else.
He's been wanting to be a part of us on this end for a long time.
He's just a
I'm
troublemaker.
tired of shouting down there. I came down
Actually,
here
his
to-
Laura was tired
I
of
came
sitting
down
next
here
to him.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
Came down here.
Yeah, I
to go
don't
to
know. There's
school
some
every
long
day.
note on there. Something
There's a
wrong
note that
with-
says, "Do not sit here because it might blow up." Or
It's the magical computer. So
That is
something
a-
broken with one computer at a time.
It's a big note.
It is, right?
It's
I
got
got
the,
halfway through and thought,
it's got the
eh.
Belmont, it's got the Belmont sweepstakes on it.
Did we win?
I put $5 on Blossom.
I think it's the winner.
Yeah, I was going to
It's
say.
always, it's always Beetlebaum, you should know that.
I thought it was Seabiscuit.
It usually is.
Good evening.
Are we ready to roll?
Oh,
We
yeah.
are ready to roll.
Do
And I don't see anyone new in the audience.
You don't have to read it all.
Except for Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, the guy on the end is new.
So I would propose that we do not read the full 197763 disclosures unless Mr.
Oh.
Robinson
He knows
come
all
on.
about
feels
that stuff.
strongly.
Yeah.
They want to practice, they can't otherwise.
You can probably recite it right along
Charles has
with
had
them.
lots of practice.
I'd love to hear it.
So when we
Charles
open the public
Charles needs to
hearing
practice.
tonight, I think we can just begin with the ex parte contact, conflict of interest
Sounds good.
portion. If that's all right with you?
That sounds great.
Chair Kidwell, if you give me 1 second,
Agenda.
That's okay. I need another second.
Go for it.
I'll be happy to have an
computer
extra second.
switch.
I don't need any seconds.
I watched the meeting from you guys last.
So it says load. Did you start it?
Yeah,
Can you
already.
start it?
It's already.
I can't.
It's running.
see. It
I don't know
says.
who she is.
If you get here early.
I know she was looking forward to it.
Oh, you're gonna turn this into a
That
mirror?
same day, I had a tear in my retina.
Oh,
So I had to
perfect.
go in and
Thank
seal
you.
that hole to
Tech skills.
it's starting to do all sorts of things.
So they did.
You gonna go down around the orange line?
shots in my back.
Eventually, yeah.
Points around.
I didn't go do the hoopla or any of that celebration. It's too hot.
They have just.
No, I'm gonna be hot.
They hadn't.
Well, at least I'm here tonight.
Either that or I
No,
thought you
I'll
because
write
you
it
did
this
love
week.
it.
At some point,
Your survival skills.
I get 3 bucks tickets already.
Oh, I
There's no
guess
reason for me not to.
I can't pause it.
When you turn
Well,
It was just been
Things
a,
we didn't have these problems.
Okay, Chair Kidwell, I think we could begin when you're ready.
We're good to go?
You're good to go.
Okay. The Planning Commission meeting for September 14th, 2015 is called to order. And the first item on our agenda, we'll jump right into PC 15-204, Pavilion Park 3 Development Application Zone Change File ZC 15-02 and Subdivision File TP 1503. And for the sake of the legalities, have any of the commissioners had any ex parte contacts or visited the site since the last meeting?
I have not had any ex parte contacts and have not visited the site since we last met.
Same here. Haven't, no ex parte or no visit.
Ditto.
I said howdy to the guys in the lobby on the way in, and that's the extent of it. Haven't visited the site since the last time.
I ignored him on the way in.
And I have not visited the site, and the only person I've talked to is myself.
Ooh.
A lot.
And I have had no contacts or visited the site since the last meeting. Does anyone have any questions for the commissioners on these disclosures? Okay, so we will proceed then. We have an updated staff report.
Good evening, Laura Turway, planner with the city. I wanted to give you a brief overview of this application. So the application includes a property at 19588 McCord Road. As you can see, there are a lot of smaller trees on the site, and it's surrounded by a lot of urban development or other subdivisions. The city reviewed the development proposal against the applicable criteria in the Oregon City Municipal Code. We came out with a staff report. We revised that staff report. Then we had our last Planning Commission hearing, and we revised it one more time. I'll talk to you in a bit more detail about those revisions later. So first I want to talk about the proposed zone change. The applicant proposed to change the zoning designation from R10, which is a single-family residential with a 10,000 square foot minimum, to R6, also single-family residential, 6,000 square foot minimum. As you can see on the screen, the property abuts the R6 zoning designation as well as the smaller R3.5 zoning designation in dark brown. There is a variety of criteria for the zone change. Some excerpt criteria are provided on the screen. Essentially, we're looking for a variety of housing types. As you can see, we have about a quarter of the city currently within the R10 zoning designation. The proposal to R6 has only 14%, so it will provide us with greater variety and greater efficiency in public facilities as well. Now to the subdivision. The applicant proposed a 25-lot subdivision. A general layout is provided on the screen, including trees and so forth. They did submit a tree removal plan. You'll notice there's not as many X's as there were on the aerial photo, and that's because a lot of the trees on site did not meet our minimum caliper to show up on plans, which is 6 inches. Also, the applicant provided a utility plan. The important part about the utility plan is the future street connection, so you can see that this road kind of connects down to Leland Road right there. We reviewed the subdivision against all applicable criteria. Subdivision are generally pretty clear and objective: lot width, depth, size, tree, traffic impacts, frontage improvements, and connectivity. The applicant brought up 4 issues at the last Planning Commission agenda. In response to the concerns, we removed condition of approval number 9. We amended condition approval number 10, 11, and 21 to address their concerns. We believe we have addressed their concerns with conditions of approval 9, 11, and 21. However, with condition approval number 10, we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about it. Carrie Richter will give you a summary.
Before Carrie goes, can you go back to your deleted conditions? I have the report, but I have the previous report. So we took those out. Which ones were those again?
So condition of approval number 9 was removed. Condition of approval number 10 was...
Which was?
It's regarding utilities. Carrie will talk to you about it in a bit more detail, but it's regarding a water line on Leland Road. And then also some minor amendments with 11 and 21. So the changes to the staff report were put in this commission agenda packet when it was emailed out.
Just hang on 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So old 9 had to do with the extension of the water line. Old 10, I guess, had to do with the 12-inch water main going to Leland and Cal-Al, or however you pronounce that, and then
Yep.
11 was amended and 12 was amended. Okay.
Yep.
21.
Oh, 21.
So they're all regarding utilities. And we've shared the draft staff report with the applicant. So that's why we believe we've addressed their concerns for 9, 11, and 21.
Laura, do you want to summarize what's been put in the record since the last?
We have also added a letter. There's copies of the letter up front. It was emailed out today with the amended agenda. It was a letter from Carrie Richter regarding a proportionality analysis and nexus analysis for the water line in Leland Road. And this deals with condition of approval number 10. Carrie can talk about it in a bit more detail, but this is a map of our water main extensions. And primarily we're talking about this 182 feet, of which the water line will have to be extended from the intersection of Cal-Al Court through to the applicant's frontage. The applicant's property is this one here in blue, and so they would have to extend this line across other frontages to their frontage.
What about the email that we received from the applicant?
We did receive an email from the applicant that was put in the Planning Commission packet last week, and it addressed all of the concerns from the applicant. So it, in addition to the comments that were in the public record at the last hearing, they added additional support.
Okay,
Thank
let's
you.
hear from Carrie.
Okay. Chair Kidwell and Planning Commission members, I put together a memo in response to the email and some testimony we received relating to the requirement to extend the water line from Cal-Al Court down to the southwest corner of the property on Leland Road. And the concerns that the applicant raised was that the obligation to extend the water line, this additional 182 feet along Leland, was not roughly proportional to the impacts of development associated with the little stub lot 16 right there that Laura's pointing out. And so I went back and worked with the Public Works Department to analyze this issue a little bit further. What we came up with is outlined in my memo that went out this morning. And this is based on material largely within the staff report. We know that the existing CRW water mains are in poor condition. They are scheduled to be abandoned in the future. We also know that portions of our water distribution system design standards require that all lots created by subdivision include permanent distribution facilities in the frontage. Section 2.0 of the standard states that mains shall be extended across the street frontage when the main is located within the right-of-way, which we have in this case. We feel like because lines have to connect, that's the nature of water lines, the only way to comply with these standards is to require the extension in front of this red area, these existing developed lots. So we also have noted that the city's 2012 Water Distribution System Master Plan, figure ES2, shows a future system pipeline extending along Leland Road. So going down Leland Road, it's kind of confusing the way the roads go here. As I understand it, McCord Road turns the corner and then Leland turns the corner. So I don't know why
It's weird out
it's weird like that. But so,
We'll blame the county.
well, I was very confused. Winnie and I had a lot of conversations on the phone until I understood the map, actually. So, what we've identified here is that by extending the water line down to the corner where McCord turns that corner and then coming back up to McCord where the applicant is already extending the line down McCord Road, the applicant will see a benefit of the increased connectivity resulting from the connection there at the corner of that green point. And those benefits that the Public Works Department have identified is increased water pressure for the entire property, increased public safety through the enhanced fire flows, increase the water quality enjoyed by the entire property because water isn't sitting in a dead-end line,
Right.
and that looping provides redundancy in the event of an outage. So it is our position that the whole property benefits by the 182-foot extension, although I understand we're not going to get the line all the way down to that corner here. We are getting it past the applicant's property on the Leland side, and then when the green property is redeveloped, they will extend and it's going to connect, and that is a benefit. Yeah.
Can they do a zone of benefit?
And they do it as
A zone of benefit for the water line? So in other words, if they go through the cost of extending the water line, if other people benefit
like
from
a
that,
reimbursement
can
district.
they be reimbursed? Right.
I don't think our code allows for the creation of reimbursement districts. So I don't
Because,
think
that's,
so.
that ends up helping defray the applicant's cost for setting up the water line. And then as other people connect to that new line, then they can pay their concomitant share for that. And it decreases the applicant's burden on
No,
providing the line.
I've seen that in other jurisdictions, but I don't think our code
Well, this is
allows for
different, a
that
little bit
kind of
different.
creation.
Yeah, but I mean,
Is it? I don't think our code has it.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think we.
Yeah, as I recall, Paul asked if that was an option last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently some jurisdictions have that, and we're not sure last time if this Oregon City had that as an option.
I think that would be a good tool to use in this case.
We do, right? Yeah, I'm sure we do, but I just wanted to. I'll look, just keep that in the past.
Okay.
Give me something to do.
All right, so we think that establishes sort of the essential nexus component of the sort of takings analysis that we have to complete in order to bear our burden of requiring this improvement. The second step of our obligation is to determine whether or not this obligation to pay for this extra 182 feet of pipe is roughly proportional to the impacts from the development. And the way we've figured that out is sort of twofold. One, we've looked at the number of lots that will be created here that will benefit, and we've provided that calculation here in an exhibit. The total length of pipe necessary to provide the enhanced connectivity benefits to all the proposed development from the existing waterline terminus at Leland Road to the McCord Road terminus is 1,625 feet. Conditions of approval as they are currently proposed require that the applicant construct 800 feet. And we've determined that dividing the necessary 800 feet of water line by 25 lots that will benefit by this improvement results in a allocation of 32 linear feet of pipe per lot. As a comparison, we compared that to how many lots could be built in sort of the green area, and then we did the same thing for the red area. At the current zoning, the green area could be developed into 10 lots, and thus would be required to construct 82 linear feet, which is more than the applicant is being asked to construct. And if we did the same thing for the red area, at 182 feet with 3 lots, we'd get 61 feet per lot. I guess this suggests to us that the obligation to construct only 32 feet per lot is less. and it is at least proportional to what would be required for other lots in this area to realize the same benefits. Another way to look at this would be to look at land area rather than lots. If we're asking the applicant to construct about 37% of a linear pipe system around this square, or this one half of this square, and the applicant's rezoning about land area of 224,198 square feet. The total land area that will benefit by the fully connected water line is 390,204 square feet, or they're developing about 57% of the land, and we're asking them to improve about 37% of a pipe. It's important to note that in Dolan, no precise mathematical calculation is required, only rough proportionality. So, we feel like this is sort of a rough calculation and appears to be roughly proportional. So that is why we feel like, one, it is consistent with our regulations to require an extension in order to connect this Lot 16 leg, and that it is roughly proportional.
So, Commissioner Espy's right. We do have a reimbursement district, so we do have code that would cover that. So we can.
Is that what
A developer could apply for that.
15-year span or 20-year? Or?
I think it's 10. I didn't look at I think it's 10 with the addition of an additional 10.
Okay.
So, John, does an applicant apply?
Yes, the applicant needs to apply for that.
So that would be an option the applicant could pursue.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Does
Carrie, do you have anything else to add?
I don't.
Okay, great. Questions?
I got a question.
go ahead.
John?
3.2.
John?
Yes, sir.
Given that there is the opportunity for him to make application to the city for this provision, is it your recommendation that this standard be adopted by the commission, or can he just make voluntary application? Do we have to go on record making that a condition?
No, the Planning Commission doesn't need to make that action. They can apply for it. There's specific language in there about how to apply for it and what they could apply for, so the Planning Commission doesn't need to take action on that.
Okay.
Could you give us that citation?
Yeah, it's, the chapter's 3.20, and it covers the full description of.
3.20?
Yeah.
So is it necessary for the Planning Commission to take action
No.
as a condition of approval?
No.
No.
It
Okay.
just sweetens the pot a little.
Damon, you had a question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're just talking about the 182 feet along Leland. The diagram shows lots of extra pipe, but it's just that first little section in front of the red that this is a discussion about.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then
I want to add, this is Wendy Marshall, the Development Projects Manager. They can apply for a reimbursement district for any infrastructure that's pretty much above and beyond the standard for what they would need. So they could do this for all of the water line they need to build.
Yeah. Okay. And then secondly, I guess this might be a question for John. The properties along Carlisle Court, the 19570 and the other one, are they already connected into the city water? Is there like a line on Carlisle, or?
Right, there's water line. It's a CRW water line, Clackamas River water.
So it's still
line.
more stuff to be replaced because
It's
of
not
the
our-
old
Not our
It's all
line.
Claremont
cast.
Water District and all of its
Glory.
decades old. Okay, so conceivably, then both sides of the road would get benefit from this extension.
Yes, that's true. For the
Okay.
182 feet, there is, I suppose, the property on the corner of Carlisle and Leland could argue that they would be required to extend a piece on Carlisle Court.
Well, I'm not necessarily, I just didn't know if there was a line going down Carlisle that was already ours. But both sides of the pipe extension are getting benefit because they're not already on city-owned pipe and water.
That's true.
Okay, that's,
Any other questions at this time? Okay.
Can you walk us through the mechanics of the reimbursement district? I'd like to just hear what would trigger payment and such over the course of 10 years.
You're really going to test me today. I should do it. So, my recollection is, at the end of the construction, the developer can present an engineer's report that basically says, here's where we think, we're due reimbursement, and here's some methodology by which we would like to be reimbursed. So, for instance, the 2 red lots might be allocated a percentage of that cost, that when they connected to it or when they used it, if they did that within a certain time frame, and I think it's 10 years with the option to extend for another 10 years, they would have to pay that charge, in addition to system development charges and any kind of service line charges that would be associated with that. So, and that would probably come into play as soon as Clackamas River Water, once we complete this loop. Clackamas River Water has already talked to us about wanting to, those pipelines of theirs are considered liabilities that they'd like to be able to walk away from. So it might not be very long before that property owner is required to do something like connect to Oregon City system, and then at that point in time they would have to find a way to cover that cost of the reimbursement district. But usually it's an adopted report. I want to say it's the City Commission who approves the reimbursement district, not the Planning Commission. But it's basically finding their true costs. I think it's limited to construction costs, and they allocate that based on a methodology that's fair and reasonable.
Let me just say
Maybe we could give we obviously don't do reimbursement districts very often. We're reading it as quickly as we can at this moment. Maybe we could come back to it in just a couple of minutes.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just real quick, though, I just think that when we annex properties like this, we need to make sure that there are adequate public facilities so that we're not in a position like we are in today with this subdivision, trying to piece together the utilities. Because I think that if the utilities are not available, then these properties just really shouldn't be annexed. They shouldn't come in at all until which time the utilities are available and the property can become urbanizable. Just saying.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura, do you have any additional information for us?
With that, we recommend approval with the conditions in the staff report that was included in the Planning Commission agenda packet.
The revised condition.
The revised
report and conditions.
Yes, and that's all we have.
What was amended in 11, 12, and 21?
Wendy, would you like to discuss?
Because we didn't get a cut and paste version.
All she wrote was not used, and that.
Well, there were 3 of them that they
Right.
just eliminated, and then they revised
21
10
and 21.
and 21.
And I'm just curious what the new language is, since we didn't get a...
Could one of you summarize the differences between what was in the last conditions and what are in this one?
Okay, this is Wendy. For number 9, that was the part where we had indicated that this developer would be required to reconnect some off-site properties.
Maybe you just read the old condition number 9. I mean, I have it here in front of me, but that's not helping.
Okay, I thought you wanted the differences. So number 9 did say the applicant shall, as part of the extension of the existing 8-inch water main within McCord Road, provide 1-inch water service lines and meter boxes to all existing CRW customers to the right-of-way. And we removed that because we determined that we would like that to happen, but it would not be the developer's responsibility. We would work with them in a separate agreement to incorporate that work, and they would not pay for it. So we removed that as a condition. The next one. Okay, 10 was amended. You wanted me to read the entire prior?
Well, can you just summarize the difference between what was previously in 10 and what's in it now?
Shall extend to 12.
Basically, we added, this was to extend the 12-inch along Leland Road. And basically, when it comes time to do construction plans, often there's a better alternative. So we just added
The final sentence.
a final sentence that allows alternative configurations if the city engineer found something that was more appropriate and approved it.
Right, which was exactly what we had a discussion about last time, but it was not in the conditions.
Correct. And 11 was once again regarding providing water services to the other customers, this time on Leland Road, and we removed that.
Yeah, maybe instead of saying not used, that it was removed or something, because I didn't know what not, I looked at that and I thought, what does it mean by not used? Did you remove it or just eliminate it?
Yeah, we just, that's the prior language we found on another template where we didn't want to disturb the numbering that was in
Yeah,
place.
and that's fine,
Yeah,
but,
just-
And maybe you're right, I agree,
Remove
maybe
it or
this has been
delete
deleted,
it.
might be more
Yeah,
clear.
something like that, yeah.
Thank you.
Because you had used it and now you're not using it.
Yeah.
Number 14 also indicates it's not used. I assume that means the same thing, that it was deleted.
Okay, that was another, what we had looked at before was providing a little temporary loop here, a 4-inch water line that would be removed when the permanent one came through. But when we looked at overall the situation and bringing it in here, we did not feel the need for that, so we removed that.
Okay.
And that was a temporary line anyway.
And then
21.
Looks like it's longer. That's all I can tell.
Okay, basically, this is similar for sewer. Basically, you have to extend the sewer mains along to and through the frontage. And oftentimes, it can be shown that you might be at the top of a basin. And what we do is we say you have to extend to and through unless you can show that all the other undeveloped properties can be served in another way. More feasibly, like they might have easier access to a gravity system in another direction. So that was another way. Once they get further into their detailed construction design, that we didn't want them to be beholden to that condition if the other properties could be served in a better way.
So in other words, you have to do this unless you can show engineering-wise it's not necessary.
Correct.
So the key phrase there is that if they can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the city engineer.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the sentence that says the applicant will not be required to extend sanitary sewer main on Leland Road if they can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the city engineer that all upstream undeveloped properties that abut Leland Road can be served from other locations. If this can be adequately demonstrated, the sanitary sewer lateral for Lot 16 can be located within the private sewer easement across Lot 17 and discharge into the proposed sanitary sewer system on Pelican Lake Place.
Correct.
I just said that for the record because people might be watching and they don't have the staff report.
Correct.
Okay.
Great.
And we John Lewis and I and our city engineer, we looked at this a little bit and we determined at this planning stage, we think it's feasible to do that. So we feel that it's likely that they will not have to extend the Leland frontage and they can serve it from the one lot from the private easement, which we are okay with.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, we'll then give the applicant an opportunity to make a presentation.
Uh-oh, he's got poster board.
He's got charts and arrows.
You know,
Do you have any,
I would feel naked if I didn't bring something.
do you have any 8x10 glossies
Well, it
with circles and arrows?
depends on the light. You hold it at an angle and you will cross it.
Just trying to reference all.
For the record, Rick Gibbons, planning consultant. To my left is Bruce Goldson, project engineer of Theta Engineering. We also have Mike Robinson, the applicant's attorney here tonight. So we're going to try, are we limited to 15 minutes? Is that where we're at, or do we get a little fudge factor on that? Because we,
Oh, I'd try for 15.
yeah, that's what I thought, but we only got the memo from the city attorney today, so we might need a little more time than that. We'll try to be brief, however. Here's the situation. We went to a pre-application conference on this property, and it was at that time, staff's position that there was no need to extend the water main in Leland Road, that we could have either make use of temporary access to Clackamas River water, or we could extend it from the rear, just as we're proposing to do now. So this, we had a change of staff. I don't know if it was a part of that, but at some point, the city's position changed. Well, a $40,000 hit for that intervening 180 feet of water line is a rather big hit when it was something that was not a part of our discussion. So that's I think the source of our main problem here, is that we've got a fairly significant cost that we may be able to get some reimbursement for oversizing. We may possibly be able to have a water reimbursement district formed, but we don't know for sure. Could be, maybe not. Getting any money back would be dependent upon adjoining properties redeveloping. And if you look at those properties, they've got single-family homes on them, and the potential for redevelopment is certainly not great. It could happen, but it's hardly something to bet on happening within the next 10 years because of the relatively small size of those parcels. All of the properties on both sides of the road are developed with single-family homes. And it's important to note, I think, that the provision of code that's being talked about here, 12.095D, which is talking about the need to extend to serve water lines, is talking about undeveloped properties. And all those adjoining properties are developed, fairly significantly developed, and may or may not have any remaining development potential, depending on future zone changes or something that may happen. But right now, there's little development potential. The exhibit I give you is really very similar to what City provided. Basically, all we're trying to show is that there are, at this point, the yellow line indicates the means that we're proposing to provide water service to Lot 16. Through an easement, the water meter will be placed in the cul-de-sac bulb of Pelican Lake Place. It would be a permanent situation. We don't intend it to be something that would be modified. It would be a permanent easement. Basically, at this point, the existing water line terminates, we said 178, I think maybe it's back 3 or 4 feet beyond that, because the city's saying 182. I'll take their number. And then we've got 50 feet of frontage, which is in green, and we would understand normally that would be our responsibility. Our discussion at the pre-application conference was that that would be a fee in lieu of situation. That we wouldn't be building that line. Same with the road frontage improvements, because we're looking at such a small piece there, we'd be looking at a fee in lieu of actually doing the construction. The argument for nexus in the memorandum we received today, we think has a couple of problems. The discussion under Section 2 says that Section 2 of the standards is talking about the city's water distribution system design standards. Section 2 of the standard states that the main shall be extended across the street frontage when the main is located within the right-of-way. Well, what it really says, first of all, it says in general. There's discretion in these things. But then it says, as a condition of water service, all developers will be required to provide public water mains of sufficient size for fire protection to adjacent parcels. This shall include the extension of water mains and easements across the property to adjoining properties and across the street frontage of the property to adjoining properties when the main is located in the street right-of-way. So in other words, the purpose given here is for fire protection. There's an existing fire hydrant. Well, if you look on that map behind you, at the intersection or the bend in Leland Road now, there is a...
Right there at 420.
420 at the corner of that lot to the southwest. Thank you. There's a fire hydrant right there. Also a fire hydrant up here. So if you look at those things, there's full fire protection existing along that entire road right now. You only have to have 500 feet the maximum separation we've got would have less than that for that entire length. So the reason given under the design standards for extensions is not met. Further, that language has typically been, in my experience in dealing a lot of years in the city of Oregon City, has been that when the water line is to your border, you extend it across your frontage. That's what's the intent, the way it's been practiced. It doesn't say that you're going to extend it some unknown distance from a water line off-site that you don't need. There's also some discussion here about, in the memorandum today, I'm going to let Mr. Golson talk about the rough proportionality and the fact that there are many things that the city feels will be a benefit to this subdivision area. We don't believe that's met, and I'll ask Bruce to talk about that now.
Okay, so in the memorandum that we received today, one of the reasons for a benefit is an increase in water pressure, and that simply will not happen with an extension of the line. In fact, looping it together does not change the water pressure. Water pressure is based solely on the height of the reservoir, the pump station, wherever it's at, and elevation at your location. So the water pressure will not change. As a matter of fact, I checked the water pressure at the site today on 2 sites, and I found it to be, on the city system, I found it to be about 70 psi. And so that's what we would expect throughout the subdivision, plus or minus probably about 5 or 6 pounds. So that's well above the fire requirements for fire protection. I also spoke to...
just jump in there for a second. And the city's design standards, it says the normal working pressure in the distribution system should be approximately 60 psi with a range of 40 psi to 100 psi with a minimum of 35 psi in the building. So we're above even their normal design parameter.
So the other thing that's in the memorandum is I spoke to Clackamas River Water, and they said, yes, we'd like to abandon it, but we would provide service to this lot. We're not opposed to that, and the only way they can abandon their line is for it to be totally extended. They can't chop it off in one little segments. It wouldn't work very well for them to abandon it in small segments. And this new subdivision provides connections for at least 4 connections that are totally dead end at this point on the streets that we're extending. You know, actually that half street there is connected too. So there's four connections. So we've increased the water flow capabilities and redundancy of the system significantly with this subdivision. It's going to be hard to improve the water quality with this connection. There will be dead-end lines in any development like this until it's totally built out, so intermediate water quality will probably not be a factor.
Excuse me, Bruce, wouldn't that normally be a function of maintenance anyway, to go in and pull off lines and clean out sediment?
Right. So, and anytime you have a cul-de-sac or something like that, you're going to have a dead-end line anyway. So the chances of increasing the water quality would be minimal. And certainly looping is a benefit, and it would occur at some point when and if the city ever gets that line built clear around McCord and Leland Road. Yes, they will have a total loop around the system, but that may be years and years away unless they decide to build it themselves. Reimbursement options, although it's an option, it has to be approved by the city, and there's no guarantee that that would ever occur, that would be allowed. And then there's limited opportunities in this particular situation that we'd ever recoup any of that monies that would be spent on this extension. That's all I have.
So Our concern relates then to condition of approval number 10, and we would ask that it be stricken entirely. That we be allowed to service Lot 16 via the manner shown on the preliminary engineering plans with a house service from the rear, and that we at most be required to do a fee in lieu of for the frontage improvements across the subject property. Similar with condition number 27, which relates to the street improvements in that area, the discussion at the pre-app was that it probably didn't make a lot of sense to do a full street improvement for 50 feet, given that you're going to have to blend in, and it's, you know, a very short distance. It made more sense to provide a fee in lieu of doing that. So we would ask that that option at least be put in there, could be discussed with staff.
There's some respects, a short section like this could be a hazard in that you'd widen the road for a very short distance. You'd have transitions back and forth, but people would still tend to be lost out there when they're driving in that very short section.
It might slow them down, though. It might slow them down.
No. Might
speed them up.
I think the other way.
At this point, I turn the mic over to Mike Robinson. I think I'll stay up here. Stacy.
Thanks, Rick. Good evening, Chair Kidwell, members of the Commission. My name is Michael Robinson. I'm a land use attorney. I'm here on behalf of the applicant tonight. My mailing address is 1120 Northwest Cooch Street. Cooch is spelled C-O-U-C-H, 10th floor, Portland, Oregon, 97209-4128. So I want to follow what Mr. Goldson and Mr. Givens had to say. And my discussion is solely focused on condition of approval 10, which is found in staff report at page 3. And Mr. Kidwell, I probably need maybe 3 or 4 minutes if that's fine. All right, thank you. So we've already heard the reasons for the water line extension to serve Lot 16 that staff's relied on can be addressed by the applicant's extension or by the applicant so that the extension isn't needed. First of all, they've said they can provide a water line and sewer extension to Lot 16 via other means, via private easement. One of the arguments in the staff report was that Oregon administrative rules don't prohibit or don't allow water and sewer lines in the same easement. The testimony from Mr. Goldson in the email that Laura referred to is that, in fact, that's acceptable. And as they both said, the Clackamas River Water District doesn't object to serving Lot 16, and that's contrary to the finding found in staff report, page 16. In addition, the legal justification isn't present to justify this off-site exaction. There's no need for this 12-inch line to serve this single lot. It can be served by other means. The purpose of condition of approval 10 is to serve other areas. That's finding at page 17. But there's no requirement that the Water District System Master Plan is an approval criterion under ORS 197-195 sub 1. And sorry to be speaking in lawyerese. That's simply a requirement.
You're a lawyer or something.
I still apologize for it. That's a statute that says that limited land use decisions like land divisions have to be subject to the criteria found in the land use regulations, which is your zoning ordinance. There's no evidence of subdivision impact that justifies the condition of approval. I think Rick and Bruce did a good job of talking about why looping, fire protection, water quality, and water pressure aren't supported by substantial evidence. And remember, because this is an exaction, the city has the burden of proof to show this rough proportionality, this essential nexus. And those reasons, we appreciate the discussion that Carrie and Wendy had, but that doesn't translate to substantial evidence. In fact, there's contrary findings in the staff report. The findings on Goal 11 at page 13 state that public facilities and services can be provided. The findings under OCMC 1608-030B7 at page 23 say the fire department hasn't noted any concerns. And let me read an email that Darren Gustorf with ICON got from Mike Bowman. And Mike is the deputy fire marshal with the Clackamas Fire District. Did I get that right? So Darren emailed him today and said, could you tell us a little more about the issue of water pressure or water quality? And here's what he wrote back. And I'm going to read the whole paragraph. Some of it's not particularly relevant, but I want to read the whole paragraph. Hi, Darren. Thanks for the email and info. I spoke with the fire marshal, and he was not aware of any pressure or flow issues in that particular area either, but I left a message with Oregon City Public Works because they'd have a better info on that, and I'm reading verbatim. Parent, I've not heard back, close parent. I did notice on our maps that McCord coverage isn't very good, and if you travel southeast on Leland, the hydrant coverage isn't ideal either. And I think Rick and Bruce talked about the hydrant coverage. So what you have from an email from the fire district is that there's no water quality or water pressure issue. As I've already said, the city has the burden of proof to show a nexus between the impacts of the subdivision and the condition. The purported justification in terms of fire protection, water quality, water pressure, or simply the benefit of looping, there's no evidence to support that. As Bruce said, you're always going to have dead ends in situations like this. I also want to note that OCMC 16-1209-095D, which is discussed on page 30 of your staff report, and Rick touched on this, said that the water system has to be extended to allow for future connection of neighboring undeveloped properties. And it looks to us, from the slide that's in front of you, that the neighboring properties are in fact developed. It doesn't say underdeveloped, it says undeveloped. And I see shadows that look like dwellings on those, so that tells me it's developed. So I think you can conclude that in fact that code provision doesn't justify the extension. So in total, let me make one last argument about the proportional analysis. I appreciate the analysis that again Carrie and Wendy went to. But I think the proper analysis, because all of this is based on serving Lot 16, is the cost for $56,000 to extend the lot to serve Lot 16. It's not the larger subdivision because the larger subdivision doesn't need this extension. So that's the proper proportional analysis. And when you take all of this together, we know why, we appreciate the city's intention, and we know why this might make sense to the city, but I think the answer under relevant law is this is a city requirement, not an applicant requirement. So having said that, I would tell you to the extent we have the chance to, we'll continue to work with staff to see what we can come up with. I should note one other thing before I ask for final written argument. I heard the discussion about the reimbursement district. I appreciate that. Just a couple of thoughts, and I agree with your interim city manager. It's probably not something you can really do anything about, but I appreciate Paul asking the question. First of all, just looking at this map, I'm not sure who would reimburse us. You'd have to get people getting a larger hydrant or redeveloping their property, which I assume takes a zoning change. So it's unlikely that there's much opportunity for us to recoup in 1 year, let alone $56,000. The other argument that Mr. Lewis made is that when the CRW lines are abandoned, city lines will be put in. I think if you look at your reimbursement district, the people who are required to reimburse have to have a triggering event, not the other way around. So they have to do something that relies on the improvement that's being reimbursed, not the city installing new lines and triggering that. I could be wrong, but I think that's the way it works.
That's true.
So we would appreciate, let me put it legally, we're not waiving our right to final written argument, Chair Kidwell. We'd like 7 days until a week from today, September 21st, to submit final written argument, no new evidence. We're not asking for the evidentiary record to be held open. What we'd like to do is give you a nice letter that summarizes all this, that you have a week to read, and then you would come back, Chair Kidwell, and deliberate on the 28th. Laura told me that we need to try and get the letter to her earlier, so I would commit to having the letter to you before noon rather than 5 p.m. on the 21st, and we'll try and have it either that Friday or earlier than noon on the 21st, Laura.
And then
So,
could send out the planning commission agenda that same day.
Yeah,
So
so-
that's a week before our next hearing.
we may be able, and this is not a request that the hearing be continued or the record held open. This is applicant's final written argument. So thanks for your time. We appreciate your listening to us, and we hope that at the end of of our submittals that you'll agree with us that condition of approval 10 should either be stricken or at least reworked so that it complies with relevant law. Thank you for your time tonight.
Great. Before you leave the table,
I'm not going anywhere.
are there any questions from the commission?
I have one. I guess I have to reject your lawyerese on just because on the red lots, just to make it simple. aren't subject to this because they already have some development on it. Because if that's the case, you wouldn't have to do anything to the blue lots because there's already a house on it. So either the potential for growth or the growth that happens makes it applicable, or the fact that there's any sort of structure on it makes it inapplicable.
And may I?
Well, yeah, you should rebut that in some way.
Well, all I can do is read you the code, and by the way, it's not the first time someone's rejected my arguments. That's life.
Yes.
So I'm just going to read you a portion of your code from staff report, page 30. This is OCMC 1612095D water system, and this is the relevant sentence, I think. Applicants are responsible for extending city's water system to development site and through the applicant's property to allow for future connection of neighboring undeveloped properties. So I didn't write the language, your city council did, and it says neighboring undeveloped properties. I think it's a fair conclusion that that precise language doesn't take into account underdeveloped properties or some other consideration. Seems pretty clear to me. But I appreciate first of all, I appreciate your asking questions, and I appreciate having the discussion with you. I just say you have to read the code and decide for yourself, but I think it cuts against the city argument that this code provision can be used to require that.
And I guess that's a definition issue as to what undeveloped actually means. Because in my mind, I think that properties can be underdeveloped or undeveloped, and I think that could be synonymous. If there can be a partition that's done that requires another water line, then I think that's an undeveloped property.
And Chair Kidwell, I think Commissioner Espy asked a good question. So as part of our final written argument, we'll see if there's a relevant definition. If there is, we'll cite it.
Yeah, because I mean, because if that were the case, then that whole piece of language would be moot. I don't think we would ever run into a situation where we would have absolutely undeveloped property, except for maybe in very few instances.
I guess, and maybe if this proves to be the case, it's a project for the city commission to amend the code. But I'll look at the definition, and if it's there, I have no reason not to add it. I'll make sure we do.
Yeah, and then I guess I'll piggyback onto that and look into the future and our ability to provide facilities in the future for this. And we always say that we have to let development pay for itself. And I am trying to figure out or look at when we would actually be able to provide additional water line in this area that will be needed in the future.
Laura, could you put the slide back up that said condition of approval? I'm sorry, I know you just took it down. I apologize. I was trying to bedevil you.
Yeah.
This slide?
Yes, thank you. So the only thing I was going to point out, Chair Kidwell, I think this is a case where the applicant is paying for its way.
It's going to get bigger any second.
There you go. There we go. Thank you. I appreciate what Mr. Espy had to say, but I think this is a case where the facts show the applicant is paying for its way. We're doing a tremendous amount of extensions, plus we're connecting, what did Bruce Goldson say, 4 dead-end streets? Right. So I think we're not asking not to do a number of conditions. We're asking you to consider to not require this sole condition of approval that we don't think is justified either under code or by the facts or by the law. Everything else we're willing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking that if this doesn't get done now, I'm thinking that this water line will probably be put in, if it gets put in, almost entirely on the city's dime.
And I'm sorry, the last thing I might offer, and this is a good discussion, and I would say that's what the Supreme Court has said. If you want to simplify it, there are instances where the public has to bear a burden, and there are instances where the applicant has to bear the burden, and that's what you all are faced with. And I think here we would agree that in the other instances, it's clear we have to bear the burden of cost, and that's why we're not objecting to them. It's the sole condition that we think cuts against the government in this instance, and it should be a government-financed project. I will say, having said that, I'll say this again, conditions are not new evidence. If there's an opportunity for us to work with your staff to come up with a modified condition that we could live with, we will do that.
Other questions for the applicant at this time?
Can I just add one thing on that point? Commissioner Espy's concern is that there's only this area here left, and through these two to pay for it. The reality, the urban growth boundary goes quite a ways further down this way, and presumably needs access to that water line. So there's other development that help.
So thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank
And-
you.
And again, just to be clear, we'll submit our final written argument no later than noon on the 21st. We'll try and accommodate your staff by getting in earlier, but that means, as your city attorney would tell you, you'll come back and deliberate on the 28th. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your
Great,
time.
thank you. So at this time, is there any public testimony? I have no cards for anybody signed up to speak. Okay. Is
We need a little help from her.
there any objection that we close the record at this time?
I don't want to
You
do
don't,
it.
you don't want to do that?
No, not till I hear from Carrie.
Okay, go ahead.
So we've had several requests made, and would you be so kind as to give us a little direction and some response before whether we should close the hearing, not close the hearing, close the record, excuse me, not the hearing, the record.
Take
it. You can take a breath. That's fine.
No, it's okay. Mr. Robinson's brought copies of the statute that relates to the 197763 that allows.
That he read and everything. So.
Well, no, what he brought a copy of, there, 197763 are the procedures that we use to run our hearings. And, you know, at the initial hearing, any person can request a continuance and they're entitled to that continuance. There's another provision in 197763 that says that that an applicant is entitled to final written argument unless they waive that right. And so the applicant has exercised that right in this case. And so we are obligated under state law to allow them that right. So we will not make a decision tonight. We will allow them to do that. But we are going to close the public record tonight.
And then our deliberations will
And
be
then
at
your
the next
deliberations will be at the next meeting. There won't be any testimony at the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay?
so we can
Not
close the
And
record?
so, but I'm not sure if that answers Denise's question or if you want, ask me a question.
That was part of the question. I'm assuming that if we close the record, the information that they're going to be submitting will be on the record and will not
Will be in the record.
in the record.
And
Will it be new?
I would invite you to invite the public works staff to respond to the testimony that we received regarding
Oh,
the
absolutely.
benefit from this. I am not
Absolutely.
qualified
No,
to
absolutely.
testify about that.
That's assumed.
So before you close the public record, you might want to invite the public works staff to comment, and I think that may be why Wendy moved over, or why they moved the slides around or
And
something.
could you focus on the requirements to loop systems and that sort of thing? Where you guys are, what your code says about that?
Well, just in general, I wanted to add a few comments and maybe hopefully clarify. The pressure issue that Bruce talked about, he's correct. The pressure, if you're talking about there are a few different kinds of pressure, and I don't want to bore you to death, but basically you have static pressure, that's what you're getting out of the system right now. The pressure, that will not change, he's correct. It's based on the level of your reservoir and the distance. What will change is the residual pressure. Basically, when you flow a hydrant, so you have static pressure of, say, 60 psi, you turn the hydrant on, the pressure drops. And that residual pressure is what will increase when you loop.
Okay.
So you don't want to, basically, you can't go below 20 psi when you flow the hydrant. So that's what you want to do when you run the hydrant. So yeah, for your drinking water, it's not going to change. It's more the pressure for the fire hydrant flow. So I apologize for any misguidance there. That was my fault.
That's basically what happened, a couple weeks ago when the boil order went out because somebody had opened up a hydrant down on Redland Road or whatever. It's that residual pressure that created the issue, or lack of residual pressure.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the concept we're talking about. And also CRW has indicated to us also, what they have said is if the city of Oregon City does not require the main extension down Leland, that they will serve the Lot 16. Sure they will. I think that's probably law that they would have to serve everybody, but that's not the preferred. They would have to if there were no other options. And as far as the question about what's developable, pointer. Oh, I thought we had it right here.
Oh, the clicker.
So you've got 3 planners on this thing, so you know it's like.
Okay. Basically,
We're
when
familiar with that.
Carrie and I had looked at different ways to look at what's available, and mostly talking about reimbursement district or whatever you call them here. I've only worked with them at a former agency. I'm not really familiar here yet. But basically, what you do is you don't just look at this. And as we talked about, this is developable. All this in the gray, when it's comes in, it will be R10. We're going to take this out because those are lots that were in a subdivision. So what I kind of looked at was all of this and all of this and all of this. All of this is developable. And you can look at it. And with the development patterns, and I can attest to the fact that we've been extremely busy this year since I came on board 3 months ago. This is likely to develop. And there is everyone will tell you there's a shortage of inventory. So I think it's not infeasible to see that this will develop soon, and possibly this. And it appears that in Oregon City we are amenable to rezoning at higher density. So I think you need to really look at this when you're looking at what's the potential that would use that water line. And I think a reimbursement district would be used and in the 10 to 20 year time frame that's allowed. And that's what you would do. Typically, the engineer is tasked with coming up with the methodology. So they would look at, you might say, somebody fronting on that line would pay a higher cost per lot or square footage. And if you're getting back here behind that, they would pay as well, but it would be less because they're further from the main line. And they would come up with the strategy, but that's typically how it would play out.
And is there any correlation between, denser development and the need for looped and redundant systems?
Well, just more lots, that's
Right.
more impact on the system.
So the more lots you have, the more of a need you have to have redundant and looped systems. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's a little harder to assess with water because you're talking about a loop system that's not gravity. It's easier to visualize something more distinct when you're looking at a street section or maybe a gravity sewer that's going one way, whereas water's coming from all directions, and that benefits for all the reasons we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And I think that's just all I wanted to add. I hope that helps clarify what we're looking at.
Yep.
Does staff have any other clarifications? Because we'd like to give applicant an opportunity to rebut.
The only other piece I'll take is this reimbursement district. I'm reading some of the language here. I just lost my network connection, but what I recall in there is, reimbursement districts are set up based on the number of properties that are in the district, right? And if a majority of those property owners oppose that district, so in this case, let's say we had this 12-inch stubs to lot 16, and we established the zone benefit, or sorry, it's not a zone benefit, the reimbursement district as being those 3 fronting lots. Let's just, the one on what would be one that would be on the kind of the more north side, or the 2 on the more north side of the road and the other one on the south side of the road. No, I'm talking the corner of Kalal Court. If you yeah, on Kalal.
There.
So on the corner of Kalal and Leland, and then the 2 across the street from that. If you had the majority of those folks oppose the reimbursement district, then that becomes a problem for formation of the district. So the city commission needs to consider that in accordance with the guidelines. It may not be an option. So that's adds more risk to the developer for that reimbursement district. So I'm not sure it's.
Now, that's not an LID. That's a reimbursement district that has that language in your code.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one other. I forgot about this, but besides the reimbursement district, there's credits the developer can request for system development charges for facilities that are larger. So, in this case, if it were a residential street or if it were a non-transmission main, they'd be required to put in an 8-inch pipeline. In this case, we're asking for a 12-inch pipeline. So that 12-inch pipeline, the difference in cost between what it would cost to build a 8-inch pipeline versus a 12-inch pipeline is another form of reimbursement that the developer can request, and they typically do.
I think instead of receiving in lieu fees from the developer, I would be more amenable to accepting the reduction in the credit in the SDCs for the upside system. I think we get a lot more bang for our buck as a city that way.
And it's cleaner, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Does the staff have any other comments or information to offer?
You'll get your chances.
Okay. We'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond to the city's comments.
For the record, my name is Bruce Goldson. Wendy's correct in that there is a residual pressure. Once you turn the hydrant on, I don't care if it's looped, could be looped 27 ways, there's going to be a drop because the water comes from all kinds of directions. You may get better flow if it's looped, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost your opportunity for fire flow. It just means that it's coming from several directions that you could have like 6-inch lines might be the same as having a single 8-inch line. But there's going to be a residual drop no matter what you do. When you open a hydrant, there's going to be a residual drop in the pressure.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no objections from the commissioners, we'll close the record at this time.
Sure.
Please do.
So the record for this case is closed. We've had a request for continuance.
No. Request that we hold our decision.
Hold our decision.
Yeah.
And it's actually not a request, it's a legal requirement that we hold our decision until the next meeting.
I would entertain a motion.
And then also real quick, so we have a city commission agenda already set for this case, and that would be on October 7th. So we would also continue the city commission hearing as well, since we're continuing the planning commission. So the city commission would be moved to October 21st.
Carrie, what's the correct word since we're not continuing it?
You are continuing this
Sorry,
matter,
I
but
used
you're
it.
not continuing the open record.
Right,
So the
okay.
record is closed.
Okay. Well, I move that since the record is closed, that we continue our deliberation of this particular item to the 28th of September.
And authorize the applicant to submit
And
final
authorize the
written
applicant
argument
to-
before the 21st.
Yes, okay, and authorize the applicant to submit final written arguments in support of the application no later than noon on the 21st.
Okay with that?
We said that, so yes, we're okay.
Was that okay, Carrie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay, Tom seconded.
All right. Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Before I say it, I guess there was one other item, 27, with some language changes, which I didn't have an objection to. Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, let's get on with the minutes.
We will see you gentlemen back here on the 28th.
So 28th.
Well, this computer never works.
You know what I'm talking about with item 27?
I'm trying to click to the next agenda item.
Oh.
One moment.
It's the minutes.
No.
We don't have consent, we don't
So
have
the-
consent agendas.
We have a consent agenda for planning commission minutes.
Well, I wouldn't call it that, but
Yes.
There's a series of 4 minutes, one
Let
for,
let me dig to the bottom of that pile here and pull those things out of here.
I'd like to move approval of the minutes of December 8th, 2014.
and-
Second.
all
I
right.
remember them verbatim.
Yeah, really. Can I ask a question before we proceed? What is the policy if you're not at a meeting? Should you abstain, even if you've read the minutes and all that? Should you abstain or vote on them?
Assumed you watched the video.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
it really is.
My policy is that even if I wasn't here, I have the opportunity to review the tape, I can read the minutes,
Okay.
I have enough information that I could vote on them even if I wasn't there.
That's what I wanted to clarify. I missed one of those meetings I wanted to ask. Thanks.
Yes.
You were at this one.
Yeah, just before we started all that
That'd be impressive.
process.
So
Thank you.
we've done it a little bit different. We put them on a consent agenda item.
So it's
It-
for the consent agenda unless we pull something off to be specifically addressed.
Yes.
I don't like that.
Foraging, maybe.
Oh, we
So,
kind of talked about it last time, so
Yeah,
this
I
is
know,
our
and I
first
said I
try
didn't
with
like
the
it then either.
consent agenda.
For like mushrooms. Yeah.
There's a
So-
motion and a second on the floor.
Okay. Commissioner Henkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
aye.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile, Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So the next meeting is January 12th, 2015.
My one question before I make the motion is that this was quite a lengthy hearing, and there's just not a whole lot of stuff in here about what we talked about or what we did. So it's really abbreviated.
I guess everything is videotaped. The complete record's online.
These are action minutes.
How much, it's a function of what kind of, how much money do we spend to come up with more
And
details?
I understand, I'm just.
And the other thing I
Making a
might
point.
point out, if you look at the Attorney General's model minutes,
Right.
they are
Yep.
tiny. I
Here's
mean,
the issue,
they
here's
are.
the vote. Here's the issue, here's the vote.
We've
Who's-
gone to
who's
that
Attorney
model
General?
in
The
Lake
state.
Oswego.
The state of Oregon or the United States
The
of
state of the
America?
Oregon.
I don't have an opportunity to, nor have an interest in reviewing the Attorney General's.
No, no, no. I'm
quiz
saying
you.
that, what I'm saying,
You are? Oh, damn.
Commissioner McGriff, is that the state of Oregon puts together a set of model rules that they sort of use to guide us through what the public records rules require. And they have a sample in those model rules, and the sample is of an hour hearing, and it is a paragraph of what happened. So we've sort of used that as a guide of what state law requires.
I appreciate the reference and the fact that we have a fabulous Attorney General for the state of Oregon. I don't agree. So we'll just move on. So I move that we approve the minutes of January 12th, 2015.
Second.
Seconded by Tom again.
Oh, sorry. Don't want to be a pig.
Commissioner Henkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile, Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
So the next meeting minutes we need to approve is for January 26th,
There was a lot of discussion
2015.
Move approval.
on the same.
Second. And I must say, based on my notes and looking at these notes, they were very thorough. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Henkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile, Chair Kidwell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And the last meeting minutes that we need to approve is for April 13th, 2015.
Do it.
Nope.
No.
I'll move
Move,
approval.
Bob.
Nope. All good.
Zach has moved.
Okay. I'll second.
All right. Commissioner Henkin, Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
Abstain.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile,
Aye.
Chair Kidwell.
I was absent but reviewed the tape, and I will say aye.
All right, motion passes.
Okay.
Tony's
Do
going
we-
to tell us about the fabulous meeting we had last week.
Yes, we have a report from the Community Development Director.
Interim
Thank-
city manager, actually.
That's right.
He's not here in that capacity.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair Kidwell. Evening, Commissioners. Just a couple of updates. We're going to be bringing back in a work session the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan. You'll be hearing that in the near future. I think what we're proposing to do, since it's been a while since we've looked at that, is bring it back and just have a general discussion about what the plan was, what we went through, what you're looking at when you open up that document.
You mean a general discussion? Or can we use our discretion on the discussion?
I guess it depends on what you're looking at. We had direction from the city commission to bring this back to the planning commission for an additional review with a limited review, and it specified what the planning commission would be reviewing on that remand, and we can walk through that during the work session as to exactly what that motion was by the city commission and what those issues are, and that's what we're focusing on this point. We're not.
So this will be a work session.
This will be a work session. Yeah, just I don't think anybody was on any of the boards when it was last adopted. So really just an introduction to it, and then where we're at, what the commission directed us to do on the remand, and what we're going to be preparing for your review when we complete those findings and bring that back to the commission.
Do we have a date for that?
We're working on that right now. The general discussion will probably be, we may try to put it on the 28th, just because it is a background, and we imagine we could probably hopefully get through this hearing, of this continued item in an hour, and maybe then spend, some time, 45 minutes or so, on the Beaver Creek Concept Plan update. We'll most likely also be bringing up the Cove application. Once again, it's a larger application, so we'll bring it forward. And so just remember that the Beaver Creek Concept Plan is legislative. The Cove is going to be quasi-judicial, so really we're looking at this to update you on the project. Please, no decisions, discussions.
Right.
If they don't do this, I'm not going to approve it type of comments. This is really just, because it's such a large application, to bring it to you so that you can start understanding what the proposal is and what the issues are, rather than getting hit with it 7 days before the hearing and a lot of reading to do.
So that's work session 2.
Yeah, we'll do that in a work session as well. We just deemed it complete. We did not? No.
We will just deem it complete.
Submitted additional information.
Oh, gotcha. So we're getting close on that one as well.
So it'll be much later then.
Yeah, but it'll be coming sooner. We're probably getting pretty close on that one. We also have in a zone change, comp plan amendment up by 213 and Beaver Creek Road, kind of in that area that you'll be seeing in November, as well as the hospital, Providence Willamette Falls master plan zone change comp plan amendment. So just to give you some idea of what's coming up on the calendar here over the next couple of months. We also had our...
Before you go to the fun part, can I ask you a question about... So the one meeting that I have missed in a while was when you presented this commission with a copy of the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan, and I've actually been very slowly reading it. I haven't read the whole thing. I've just been picking it up when I can't sleep at night, going through a few pages here and there. I will have to say that I am vaguely familiar with what we did, but it's been so long that it's just a big blur. So how would you propose I get myself up to speed if we're going to be narrowing our focus on what we're going to be talking about at the work session? I mean, I don't want to know every single detail, but I'd like a bigger picture about we're here, we ended up here, now we're back to here.
We can provide that during the work session.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in opening it up for big discussions or whatever, but I want to have a really good grounding and basis so that when we move it forward, I'm not sitting here going, I don't know what we're talking about.
So you're talking about essentially the process from city commission approval through LUBA,
historical
appeal,
background.
the remand, amendment to the 2040 concept. So
yeah, I mean,
that process.
I'm familiar, at least. I don't know if the process that we used for South End was the same we used for that, which from what I understand, it wasn't. So that's my only familiarity, is having been involved in the South End Road Concept Plan, South End Area Concept Plan, not the road, the area. That was really a different process than we use. So that's where I'm feeling like I'm at a real disadvantage on this particular one.
Fair
Can you
enough.
guys put copies of that stuff in the library too, possibly?
I think he gave us all a copy of it.
Did we get copies of that?
Yes.
Yeah, big, thick.
It wasn't super thick, but yeah, it's sitting on my dining room
I think I
table.
remember now.
Tony, what I'd be interested in is, when you say remand, you're talking about Luber, right?
Yeah.
From back?
Yeah.
Why? That's what I'd be interested in.
Well, he's
What were
gonna-
they concerned?
he's
What were
gonna
their
tell us
concerns?
Yeah.
You see, that's what because if I don't have that information, I wouldn't know why. You know, so if you do that, I appreciate it.
All right, and then we had the, as everyone's aware, we received the additional $7.5 million funding from the state for the Willamette Falls Riverwalk project. We chose Snowhead Dialogue, Mayor Reed, to complete that project. We also submitted an application for a community planning and development grant for what we're calling a development opportunity study on the private property. So you can think of the Riverwalk as really public with some private. And then you have the private property and you have infrastructure, which is kind of almost, essentially a public agency is most likely to take over that infrastructure. So we have an interest in that. And then you have the private economic development that's going to happen on the property. And you have different levels of public involvement in each of those investment. So the community planning and development grant we applied for was a little over $1 million, with $450,000 coming from the property owner, Falls Legacy LLC. It's a partnership between Oregon City and Clackamas County, and we've received preliminary approval for 100% funding of that project that was recommended by the selection committee. The Metro Council will be considering that, I think, to the 24th or the 28th of this month. So that was good news as well. So we had an event, a kickoff event at the Portland Art Museum last week. We had I think we estimated about 440 people present at that. It was essentially a Bright Lights event put on by Randy Gregg out of the University of Oregon. And it was kind of an introduction to the design team and some of the work they'd done and their application that they submitted as the winning consultant team. The applicant or folks in the crowd were able to submit questions about the design team, their philosophy. Thought it was a very well attended event. It was a great way to start off this project. So there'll be more to come. We've also formed a 501c3, Rediscover the Falls, to help with fundraising on this project as we move forward. So starting to get this moving again. So we look forward to the public participation and the design and the engineering that comes out of this process. We're very excited about the team that we've been able to put together.
So the important question, when can I party on the dance floor?
I got to see you dance.
No, I can party that day.
Oh, yeah.
We have about a 18-month, 2-year design and engineering process. So you're looking at construction. Obviously, we don't have all of the funds right now. We have just under $20 million. So part of this process will be, how do you phase this? Which part gets constructed first? How do we make sure that the infrastructure we're putting in there isn't redundant? We only want to put in one water line. So there's going to be a lot of work that goes into that. So
like the joke I heard that only works this year. So where are we going to be 5 years from now? I don't know. I don't have 20/20 vision.
Nice. Very nice.
Ooh, and that was on the record.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I got nothing without Eric Underwood here. I can't come back to those.
You still have time to get dancing lessons.
That's
Yes.
right.
I was trying to think if there was anything else. I just
That's really
derailed me with that doozy there.
And on that note,
And on that
thought it was
note,
really
it's not
great
coming
event.
back to me quick enough.
Did you? Did you think it was good? Yeah, we had fun.
Good fun. Good. I thought it was like I said, it was a very good, well-attended event. There were quite a few people from Oregon City and Clackamas County in attendance, made the trip up there, so we appreciate that. But I think it just shows the significance of this event and the importance of it to the larger community. I think that the work we've done informing not only Oregon City but the larger region is starting to pay off. We have quite a bit of momentum. I was telling the story that the first time we applied for CPDG grant through Metro, they have a group that reviews them, and we get the summary comments. And there were things like, nobody owns the property yet, it's not zoned appropriately. Oregon City, hasn't have the ability to pull, to complete large projects. Is this really worth the investment? This time around, the comments were like, what a great public partnership that's been put together. The momentum here is amazing. The timing of this relevant to build on the previous work is excellent. Really hope that they utilize and capitalize on the opportunity presented to them, as well as the access to the falls and the river.
All we need is water.
All we need is turn the dam back on. We'll be good to go. So it was good to see that the perception of the project is changing.
You'd call that a 180-degree turn.
Well, we didn't
It
have
did.
anything
It was
show
really
them
good to see
before.
those comments. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
I think a lot of it is due to Tony's tenacity. I really do. To start that engine running and that train down the track.
Well, thank you.
Well,
But
it's-
there's a large team from multiple agencies that have pushed this thing as far as we've gotten it. I cannot take credit for that.
It's a great effort thus far, and as I said when you made the presentation about the public partnership, I thought that mechanism is really that's going to be a key for the future. This project's not going to be completed in the next couple of years, so having that in place, I think, is a great thing.
Right, and we need to think of this in long-term transitions, phasing. How do we take this down? How do we create the excitement? Realizing what may be constructed right out of the gate is more of a holding use to create excitement, to get folks down there, and then when the time is right, the real estate's right, the project's right, that'll transform. The last thing I will say is we had the opportunity and the honor to meet with Senator Ron Wyden. He came into town and held a meeting with, really it was looking at the three main projects going on right now, the Heritage Area designation, the locks, and then the Willamette Falls project. So we had the opportunity to present before him, and we'll be following up with his local staff as well as the federal agencies, the local federal agency representatives, to plug into this project as appropriate, whether it be Small Business Association, HUD, DEQ. You can imagine certain points of this project and the redevelopment where their resources and potentially their federal funding will be needed.
Tony, what role do you see the railroad playing in this, if at all? Or have they to this point?
We've had some preliminary discussions with them as we were early on. We did surveys of the property, identifying the property line. We have encroachments going both ways, railroad into Blue Heron into railroad. Essentially, part of the plan is, pedestrian connections up and over the UP line and 99E into the promenade or over into Kenema. So there is going to need to be some discussions with them to accomplish that. We've also been working on a quiet zone at 10th and essentially 10th Street as you're coming up Singer Hill. So there'll be future discussions with them concerning the implementation and construction of a quiet zone.
Great.
Just, Mr. Chair Kidwell, one of the things that I wanted to relay to my fellow commissioners that I took away from the Bright Lights session was that Alan from Dialogue basically said, and I may not have gotten this quote exactly, but he said he wants to see local people shopping and using the area. And he said, if other people come, that's okay, but that the local community needs to embrace it. And I thought that was a major key point that he was very excited about, because it's like other places in the state that I have visited, such as the transformation of Baker City. I mean, when I was down there, I saw probably 2 or 3 friends that I knew who lived there, and they're there, and they're the ones that are enthusiastic about it. We've had situations in our community where, well, they built it, we came, and then we didn't come back as a local community. And so this is something I really see as, it's going to be done right the first time. It's going to take time, and I know people will be impatient because they'll want to see something, but I think we have to wait for the right things to come along in order for this to be what we all envisioned it to be and meet the the four goals, the whole master plan, and I think it'll be worth the wait because it'll be so awesome. So, and we will embrace it.
You know, I think as the word gets out on this thing, that downtown Oregon City is going to transform before this thing gets done.
Well,
because-
it has to.
Well, it's already doing.
If they don't,
Yeah.
they'll die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
But it's gonna change downtown Main Street
Mm-hmm.
because people say, I want to get in before this. I want to get on the ground floor.
Tom's going, I
You
hope we
know,
got-
there's certain people that have already done this, and it scares me the way that they operate.
What's the status of the urban renewal ballot?
You catch that, did you?
It has been filed.
I honestly don't know. I don't know where they're at in the
still
signature
collecting signatures.
collection.
That's all I've been able to glean.
Yeah, that's the only thing that really
I
bothers
was
me.
going to simply add about what you said about downtown. Since I've been open down there, and it's been so dead during the summer that I've had a lot of time to talk to people. It's amazing. I've talked to more people from out of town than in town. People who are just visiting and they want to know directions to McLaughlin House or this or that, and they want to know what's going on with the project down there.
Yeah.
But I mean, from all over the country, from the East Coast, from Arizona, and sometimes they've heard about my store because it's so unique. Nobody does a year-round Halloween store like I do. It's not costumes or anything like that. So they come to see that. That's not the reason they come to Oregon City, but they come to see that store, and then they ask all about the history and what's going on with down there in that area, as they call it. They don't know quite the history of it that I know because of being involved in the Planning Commission. So I'm informing all these people, but I'm amazed when I ask people where they're from, the amount of people who are from distances away who come here to Oregon City, and they all remark that they hadn't been here in a while, and that Main Street is really changing. And I hear that from a lot of local people. There's so many stores down here, and some of them just live up on the bluff. And they're going, wow, there's so many more things down here than I thought. But I think we're going to get a lot of people from other states.
Well, I think the Legacy project ultimately has the potential of being the big anchor for Main Street.
Yeah.
That will draw people to the anchor, but then that will ripple through the whole Main Street area.
Well, they'll start at 10th and they'll go down and then they'll come back and
Well, what I've noticed is that if it's really hot out in the 90 degrees, people don't bother to walk out in the heat. They go to an air-conditioned mall. And if it's cold and rainy, they don't walk in the streets. They go to the warm mall. So I'm waiting for that in-between period where they walk.
The 3 weeks in October.
This Saturday's the car show, so I'm hoping that brings a lot of people down there.
oh, it will be.
Are we prepared to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay,
It's not a world's record, but it's close.
we're adjourned.